At this moment, the unconscious Xiang suddenly sat up. In front of the two, he clumsily stood up with closed eyes. Wei Wuxian wanted to see what he was going to do, so he didn't do anything as Xiang slowly walked around him, took one stride and stepped back into the wall where he stood just a while ago. He placed his arms flat beside his body. Even the position was the same as before. Wei Wuxian pulled him out of the wall again, feeling that the situation was both hilarious and strange. As he was about to tell Lawanji that it was best not to stay here for long, he suddenly quivered out of fright, hearing the few barks that came from afar. Ever since they went in, the black-haired spiritual dog behaved itself, wagging its tail as it sat before the entrance. It waited for them to bring back its master in an anxious yet pathetic way, without barking anymore. However, right now, its barks were fiercer than ever. Lawanji spoke. "Something is wrong outside of the castle." As he reached out to help Xiang, Wei Wuxian beat him to it and carried Xiang up on his back. "Let's go out and see." The two quickly went back to the same way they came. Bending down to exit, they saw the spiritual dog face them with its back growling with the bottom of its throat at a certain direction. Although Wei Wuxian managed to come over, he really couldn't bear this type of sound and involuntarily took a few steps backward. When the dog turned around and saw that he had Xiang on his back, it instantly dashed over, causing Wei Wuxian to scream. Lawanji shifted in front of him just as he was about to throw Xiang down. The spiritual dog immediately stopped, its tail between its legs again. The reason why it didn't stick its tongue out was that it held something inside its mouth. Lawanji went forth, bent down, took out a scrap of cloth from between its teeth and handed it over to Wei Wuxian. It seemed like it was part of a piece of clothing. Before this, there must have been someone either roaming or spying around the area, and they must have appeared suspicious, or else the dog's barks wouldn't have been teeming with hostility. Wei Wuxian declared, "They haven't gone far yet. Let's go after them." Yet Lawanji responded, "That is not necessary. I know who they are." Wei Wuxian, "I also know. It must have been the same group of people who spread rumors of the Xiang Ridge. Let out the walking corpses, set out the maze array, and build the stone castles. And those sabers? But if we don't catch them now, it'd be bother to find them later." Lawanji, "I will go after them. What about you and Xiang?" Wei Wuxian, "I'll take him down the Xiang Ridge and settle down somewhere in Qianghe, around where we met that charlatan. Let's meet up there." The pace of the conversation was extremely fast. Lawanji only paused for a moment and Wei Wuxian added, "Go! Any later and the person would have run away. I'll be back." Hearing the "I'll be back," Lawanji took one deep look at him and walked off without any more words. The spiritual dog wanted to throw itself over again. Wei Wuxian immediately shouted, Wait! Take the dog away! Take it!" Lawanji had to come back again. He looked down at the black-haired spiritual dog. Too scared to put up any resistance, it yapped as it tailed behind Lawanji, turning around to look at Xiang once in a while. Wei Wuxian wiped a few drops of sweat from his forehead. After he looked at the group of white castles once more, he picked up Xiang again and went down the Xiang Ridge. At the moment, it was already near dusk. With the boy on his back and both of them covered in dirt, they received a lot of attention from passerby. Wei Wuxian went back to the street where Jinliang used the dog to chase him and found an inn. Using the money he fished out of La Wenji, he bought 2 new outfits and got a room. He first took off Jinliang's sacked robe, which had been crumpled after it was buried in dirt, then pulled out his boots. Suddenly, his movements came to a halt. There appeared to be an area of shadow on Jinliang's lower leg. Squatting down and rolling up the boy's trousers, Wei Wuxian discovered that this wasn't a shadow but a black bruise. And it wasn't a bruise that came from being injured, it was a curse mark. A curse mark was a marking made by an evil being or its prey. If it appeared, it meant that the person had offended something of extreme malice. If it left a mark, it would find you no matter what, possibly after a long time and possibly tonight. The consequences ranged from having the body part with the marking taken away or just death. Jinliang's whole leg had turned black and the bruise was still stretching upward. Wei Wuxian had never seen a curse mark in such an intense shade of black and covering such a large area. The more he looked at it, the sterner his face grew. He put Jinliang's legs down and undid Jinliang's undergarment. He only felt relief after he saw that his chest and stomach areas were all clean, not affected by the curse mark yet. At this moment, Jinliang opened his eyes. He was confused for quite a while. With his body naked and cold all round, he came to at once. He immediately got up and roared with a flushed face. What are you doing? Wei Wuxian grinned. Oh hey, you're awake! Appearing as if he had encountered a great shock, Jinliang shut the front of his undergarment and shrunk toward the corner of the bed. What do you want? Where are my clothes? Where's my sword? Where's my dog? Wei Wuxian spoke. I was just about to put on your clothes for you. His expression and tone were as kind as those of a grandmother who wanted to put on a jacket for her grandson. Jinliang leaned against the wall with disheveled hair. I'm not a cut sleeve! Wei Wuxian beamed. What a coincidence! I am. Jinliang snatched the sword that lay beside the bed in a manner so courageous that it seemed if Wei Wuxian walked one more step forward, he would kill him and then commit suicide to prove his innocence. Wei Wuxian finally managed to stop laughing. Why are you so scared? It was only a joke. I spent so much effort to dig you out of the wall, and you don't even thank me. Amid the ruckus, Jinliang combed his hand through his messy hair so that it looked a bit more decent and continued to rage. If it not for this, the fact that you dared to take off my clothes would have gotten you killed for thousands of times. Wei Wuxian, please don't. Dying once was already painful enough. There, put the sword down. With a muddled look, Jinliang did as he was told and put the sword down. When they played inquiry, although Jinliang's soul left his body and couldn't remember a lot of things, amid the haze, he knew that it was the person in front of him who dug him out and carried him down the mountain. For some time, after he was buried in the wall, he had been conscious for a while, the fear and despair in his heart at their height. Yet, he really didn't expect that the one who freed him from his fear and despair was this person whom he had hated ever since the first time they met. The color of his face switched back and forth between white and red. He was also both dizzy and embarrassed, his thoughts still fluttering everywhere. Suddenly his eyes went toward the window and was shocked to see that the sky was already dark, with a few stars scattered here and there. Coincidentally, Wei Wuxian bent down to pick up the new clothes that fell on the ground. Jin Liang hopped off the bed, put on his boots, grabbed his jacket and sprinted out of the room. Wei Wuxian originally thought that after going through so much, he would probably stay listless for a while. He knew that young people were so energetic as he disappeared into the distance like a gust of wind. Remembering the curse mark on his leg that was no trivial matter, he quickly shouted, "What are you running away for? Come back!" Jin Liang ran as he put on his soiled, crumpled set robe. "Don't follow me!" He was light on his feet and stepped out of the inn in a few long strides. After chasing for a few blocks, Wei Wuxian actually lost him. After searching for a while, twilight came, and the people on the streets also lessened. Wei Wuxian was quite annoyed. Damn, how can this child do such a thing? As he was about to give up, the angered voice of a young man came from in front of him, at the far end of the street. "I only said a few things about you, and you disappeared into nowhere. Are you some young mistress? Your temper has been growing worse and worse." "Jianchen?" Wei Wuxian immediately slid into an alleyway. A second later, Jin Liang's voice also appeared. "I already came back with nothing wrong with me, didn't I? Stop nagging." It appeared that Jin Liang didn't come to Xiang alone. Well, no wonder. Last time at Dafan Mountain, Jiangchen had been there to assist him, so why wouldn't he have come this time? However, looking at this now, it seemed that the two had a quarrel in the town of Xiang, which was why Jin Liang went up the Xianglu ridge alone. The reason why he hastened to run away was probably that Jiangchen threatened to do something to him if he didn't come back before dark or something like that. "Jiangchen, nothing wrong? You look like you just roll around in a muddy ditch and you say there's nothing wrong with you? Don't you think that it's an embarrassment to be wearing your Sax uniform? Hurry back and change it to something else. Speak, what did you run into today?" Jin Liang replied impatiently. "I already said that I didn't run into anything. I tripped and it was a waste of time." "Ow!" he shouted. "Don't tug on me like that. I'm not 3 years old." Jianchen spoke in a harsh tone. "Is it that you think I can't discipline you any longer? Let me tell you that, even if at 30, I'd still be able to tug you. Next time, if you dare to run around without telling anyone again, the whip waits upon you." Jin Liang: "I went alone exactly because I didn't want anyone to help or discipline me." Wuxian considered. I don't know about anything else, but Jianchen was quite right when he scolded that Jin Liang had the temper of a young mistress. Jianchen: "So, what now? What did you catch? Where's the spiritual dog that your uncle gave you?" It was chased in some random corner by Lan Chan. Just as Wei Wuxian was thinking, 2 familiar barks came from the other side of the alley. Wei Wuxian's demeanor changed at once, legs moving on their own. He rushed outside of if he was chased by poisonous arrows. The black-haired spiritual dog sprinted over from the other end, passed Wei Wuxian and threw itself toward Jin Liang's legs, affectionately brushing him with its tail. With the dog appearing here, it must have meant that Lao Wanchi had already caught whoever was spying near the stone castles and went to the point of rendezvous that they settled on earlier. However, at the moment, Wei Wuxian had no time to think about these things. As he ran, he just happened to end up right before Jiangchen. Jinliang, and a bunch of other Jian sect's disciples. After both sides stayed still for a moment, Wei Wuxian silently turned around and fled. Having only managed a short distance, he heard a sizzling noise and a purple electric current wrapped around his lower leg as if it was a snake. Numbness and pain surged through his body from bottom to top, and he fell at once after a pull from behind. Then someone picked him up with the back of his collar. Wei Wuxian immediately tried to find the spirit-blocking bag, but the other grabbed it before him. Jian Chen walked a few steps while holding him, entered the nearest shop and kicked open the wooden bolt that was already half latched. The owner was getting ready to close the shop for the night. Suddenly, seeing that, a fancy-clothed, dark-faced young man kicked open the door and walked inside with someone in his hand, appearing as if he was going to disembowel the victim right here. The owner was so frightened that he couldn't speak. A disciple went up and whispered a few things in his ear. With some silver pushed into his hands, he quickly fled to the back of the hall and never came out again. Without any further instructions, the Jian sect's disciples instantly spread out from the inside to the outside, making it so that nothing could enter or escape the place. Jinliang stood on the side, seeming as if he wanted to say a few things but was too shocked to do so. Jiang Chen glowered at him. "I'll take care of you later. Stay here." From the beginning of his memory until now, Jinliang had never seen such a look on Jian Chen's face before. The uncle of his who led the prominent human Jian sect ever since a young age had always been cold and dark. When he spoke, he was willing to neither show mercy nor do good. Yet right now, although he was trying hard to suppress unnecessary facial expressions, his eyes were alarmingly intense. Although his face had always been clouded, marked with arrogance and satire, it seemed as if every corner of it had come alive. It was difficult to determine whether it was vengeful wrath, fathomless hatred, or raving ecstasy. Jian Chen added, "Lend me your dog." Jinliang pulled himself out of the daze. He hesitated for a moment and only whistled after Jian Chen shot him 2 lightning-sharp beams from his eyes. The dog dashed over in just a few leaps. Wei Wuxian, body as stiff as an iron board, could only be dragged forward, walking 1 step at a time. Jian Chen found an empty room and threw Wei Wuxian inside, closing the door behind him. The dog followed them inside and sat by the door. Wei Wuxian had his eyes tightly locked on it, afraid that it would pounce on him at the next possible moment. Remembering how he had been controlled in just a short amount of time, he exclaimed in his heart that Jian Chen really knew what was the best way to deal with him. Meanwhile, Jiang Chen slowly sat down by the table and poured himself a cup of tea. For a moment, no one spoke a word. The cup of tea was still steaming hot. Without having a single sip of it, he hurled it onto the ground. Jiang Chen pulled a curt smile onto his face. "Don't you have anything to say to me?" Growing up, Jiang Chen had seen countless times Wei Wuxian's awful state as he ran away from dogs. Others may have believed him if he denied it, but in front of someone who knew him so thoroughly, it'd be impossible to argue. This was an obstacle harder to overcome than Xiang. With a sincere tone, Wei Wuxian replied, "I don't know what to say to you." Jiang Chen whispered, "You really don't learn, do you?" Ever since a long time ago, their conversations had been full of retorting and arguing. Wei Wuxian blurted out with thinking, And you have not made any progress either. Jiang Chen laughed from the anger. Sure, then let's see which of us is the one who hasn't made any progress. Remaining seated at the table, he shouted in a commanding way. The dog stood up immediately. Being in the same room as it already made Wei Wuxian sweat in uneasiness. Seeing that the large snarling dog closed in on him in less than a second, his ears were full of its low holes and its entire body numbed. He had forgot about much of his early years of wandering on the streets. The only thing he still remembered were the terror he felt as he was chased by dogs and the slicing pain of teeth and claws digging into his flesh. The fear that had been planted deep within his heart couldn't be overcome or eased, no how hard he tried. Suddenly, Jiang Chen glanced sideways at him. Whose name did you call? Wei Wuxian was in such a state of distress that he couldn't remember whether or not he called someone's name at all. He only managed to pull himself together after Jiang Chen commanded the dog to back away. After a moment of hesitation, he abruptly turned his head away. On the other hand, Jiang Chen left his seat. There was a whip attached beside his waist. With one hand on it, he bent down to look at Wei Wuxian's face. After a pause, he straightened up and asked, Speaking of it, since when have you been so close to Lan Wangji? Wei Wuxian immediately understood whose name he had unconsciously called out. Jiang Chen smiled menacingly. It was really quite curious how far he went to protect you, back in Tafan Mountain. A moment later, he corrected himself. No, you weren't necessarily the one whom Lan Wangji was protecting. After all, the Gusulan sect couldn't have forgotten you, what you did with that loyal dog of yours. How could someone so celebrated for his righteousness tolerate the likes of you? Maybe he's familiar with this body that you stole instead. His words were cruel and sinister. Every sentence was well-meaning on the surface but was actually derogatory. Wei Wuxian couldn't bear with it any longer. What's your language? Jiang Chen responded. I've never cared for such things, don't you remember? Wei Wuxian mocked. Oh, right. Jiang Chen snorted. So you think that you're qualified to make me watch my language? Just still remember, last time in Dafan Mountain, did you watch your language when talking to Jinlia? Wei Wuxian's face stiffened. Having regained the upper hand in the conversation, Jiang Chen looked satisfied again. He sneered. I suppose that you didn't have a mother to teach you. Now, you really know where it hurts the most, don't you? The person who caused Jin Liang to be criticized behind his back in such a way is nobody else but you. You're quite the forgetful old man, aren't you? Have you forgotten the things you said and the promises you made? Then, do you still remember how his parents died? Wei Wuxian immediately raised his head. I haven't forgotten. It's just that... Yet, he just couldn't find the right words to put after it. Jiang Chen interrupted. It's just what? You can't say it? Don't worry. You can go back to Lotus Bay and say your excuses while kneeling in front of my parents' graves. Wei Wuxian calmed himself down and searched as fast as he could for a way out of the situation at hand. Although he had always dreamed of returning to Lotus Bay once more, he didn't want to go back to the tattered one nowadays. Suddenly, a series of hurried footsteps approached and the door was pounded on loudly. Jin Liang shouted from outside, Uncle! Jiang Chen raised his voice. Didn't I tell you to stay where you were? Why did you come here? Jin Liang, Uncle, I have something really important to tell you. Xiang. If there's something important, why didn't you decide to speak up when I was scolding you? I didn't want to say it exactly because you kept on scolding me. Are you gonna listen or not? If not, I'm just not gonna say it. Jinliang replied in an angry voice. Jiangchen opened the door with a fuming look on his face. Tell me, then get out. As soon as the wooden door opened, Jinliang stepped inside. He had already changed into a new set of the white uniform. I really did encounter something troublesome today. I think I might have run into Wenyan. Jiangchen's brow twitched. With a hostile expression, he placed his hand on his sword at once. Where? When? Jinliang told him. It was this afternoon. There's a worn-down house about a dozen miles south of here. I went because I heard that something strange happened there, but who could have guessed that there was a fierce corpse hiding inside? Jinliang's word sounded quite believable. However, in Wei Wuxian's ears, all those sentences were nonsense. He knew precisely where Jinliang was this afternoon. Moreover, if Wenyan hid himself, unless he summoned him on purpose, there'd be no way that a junior would find him so easily. Jiangchen, why didn't you say earlier? Jinliang, I wasn't certain. The corpse moved at a really fast speed and ran away as soon as I entered. I only saw a blurry figure, but I heard the chain noises he made in Dafan Mountain, which is why I suspected that it might have been him. If you didn't scold me like that, I would have told you right after I came back. If he ran away and you can't catch him, it'd be because of your bad temper, not me. He still wanted to peek inside, but Jiangchen was so angered that he slammed the door right in front of his face. Through the closed door, Jiangchen shouted, I'll deal with you later. Get lost. Jinliang replied with an "Oh," and his footsteps faded into the distance. Seeing Jiangchen turn round, Wei Wuxian immediately pulled a mixed expression of, I'm so shocked. My secret has been disclosed. And what do I do now that Wenyan had been found? Jinliang was actually quite clever. Knowing that Jiangchen hated Wenyan more than anything, he made up such a smooth lie with the previous knowledge he had. Jiangchen knew that the Yiling Patriarch and the Ghost General often appeared together, so he already suspected that Wenyan was in the area. Having heard Jinliang's words, he was already mostly convinced, and Wei Wuxian's expression convinced him even further. On top of that, he bursted into fury whenever he heard the mention of Wenyan's name. With his eyes blinded by wrath, how could still have doubted? The hostility that built in his chest was almost making him explode. He flicked his whip, hitting the ground beside Wei Wuxian, and spoke through clenched teeth. You really take this obeying dog of yours everywhere, don't you? Wei Wuxian spoke. He's been dead since a long time ago, and I died once as well. What else do you want? Jiangchen pointed the whip at him. So what? My hatred would persist even if he dies for thousands of times. He didn't perish back then? Very well. I shall destroy him today with my own hands. I'm going to burn him right now and scatter his ashes right in front of your face. He slammed the door shut behind him and walked toward the main hall, ordering Jinliang, You keep a close eye on him. Don't believe or listen to anything he says. Don't let him make any sound. If he dares to whistle or play his flute, block his mouth first. If it doesn't work, just slice off his hand or cut off his tongue. Wei Wuxian knew that Jiangchen spoke these words specially for him to hear, threatening him against doing anything. The reason why Jiangchen didn't bring him along was so that he didn't use the opportunity to control Wenyan. Jinliang replied in a nonchalant tone, I know, Of course I'll be able to watch him. Uncle, why did you shut yourself inside along with that damn cut sleeve? What did it do this time? Xiang answered, This isn't a question you should ask. Remember to watch him properly. If I return to see that he disappeared, I'll break your leg for sure. After a few more questions about the exact location, he left with half of the disciples and went to chase the non-existent Wenyan. After some time of waiting, Jin Liang's arrogant voice traveled through. You go stand over there. You go wait on this side. All of you go stand in front of the main entrance. I'm gonna go inside and meet him. None of the disciples dared to disobey. In a short while, the door had been opened again and Jin Liang stuck his head in, eyes darting around the room. Wei Wuxian sat up straight. Jin Liang put a finger in front of his lips, walked in quietly, put his hand on Xidian, then whispered something. Xidian could only work if it recognized its owner. Jianchen had probably allowed it to recognize Jin Liang. The electric currents went out at once and it transformed into a silver ring embedded with a purple crystal, lying on top of Jin Liang's fair-colored palms. Jin Liang said in a quiet voice, Let's go. After the senseless orders, the Yumen Jian sect's disciples had been scattered all over the place. The two stealthily flipped over the window and the walls. Having left the shop, they sprinted without making any noise. As they entered the forest, Wei Wuxian heard something strange coming from behind him. Turning round, he was almost scared to death. Why is it coming along as well? Tell it to go away. Jin Liang whistled twice and the dog rolled out its long tongue. Whimpering softly, its pointy ears twitched, and it ran away disheartenedly. Jin Liang sneered in contempt. Such a loser. Fairy never bites. It just looks scary. It's a spiritual dog trained to only bite at evil beings. Did you really think that it's just a regular dog? Wei Wuxian, hold on. What did you call it? Jin Liang, Fairy, its name. Wei Wuxian, you named a dog something like that? Jin Liang replied assuredly, What's wrong with this name? When it was younger, it was called Little Fairy. Now that you grew up, I can't keep on calling that. Wei Wuxian refused. No. The point isn't whether it's little or not. Who in the world taught you such a way of naming? Without doubt, it must have been his uncle. In the past, Jiangshan also had a few puppies. The names he chose were things like Jasmine, Princess, Love, and so on, which sounded like the names of expensive girls in brothels. Jin Liang continued, True men don't care for such trifles. Why are you stressing over such details? Okay, stop. Now that you offended my uncle, you are already half dead. Now I'm letting you go. We are even. Wei Wuxian asked, Do you know why your uncle wants me? Jin Liang answered, Yeah, he doubts you that you are Wei Wuxian. Wei Wuxian thought, this time it's not merely suspect anymore. He's got the right person. He asked again, Then what about you? Don't you suspect it as well? Jin Liang, It's not the first time my uncle did such a thing. He has never let any of them go. Even it was possible that he caught the wrong ones. But if Xidian couldn't draw out your spirit, I'm just gonna trust that you are not. Besides, he wasn't a cut sleeve, but you even dare to harass. With a disgusted look, he stopped before mentioning who Wei Wuxian harassed and made a fanning gesture as if he was choosing away flies. Anyways, from now on, you have nothing to do with the Lanlinchen sect anymore. If you're gonna go at it again, don't find anyone from my sect, or else I won't let you off. Having finished speaking, Jin Liang spun around to leave. After walking a few steps, he turned to ask him again, "What are you doing still standing there? Go! Are you waiting for my uncle to come and get you? Let me tell you, don't think I'll be grateful just because you saved me. Don't expect me to say something cringeworthy either." Wei Wuxian put his hands behind his back and walked over. "Young man, there are two cringeworthy phrases in one's life that must be said, no matter what." Jin Liang asked, "Which two?" Wei Wuxian replied, "Thank you and I'm sorry." Jin Liang taunted, "What can anybody do to me if I don't say them?" Wei Wuxian, "Someday you'll have to say those words in tears." Jin Liang made a spitting noise just as Wei Wuxian suddenly spoke to him. "I'm sorry." Jin Liang paused. "What?" Wei Wuxian, "I'm sorry for the words I said to you on Dafan Mountain." It wasn't the first time that Jin Liang was told he had no mother to teach him, but it was the first time someone apologized to him in such a serious way. With an "I'm sorry" shoved right into his face, he didn't know why, but he suddenly felt a bit uneasy. He wildly waved his arms around. "It's nothing. You weren't the first person to say so anyways. It's true that I had no mother to teach me. However, I won't be inferior to anyone because of this. In fact, I'm gonna open your eyes and make you see that I'm a lot stronger than all of you." Wei Wuxian smiled. As he was about to speak, his expression suddenly changed. "Jiangchen, you?" Jin Liang was already feeling guilty since he stole Xidian and let Wei Wuxian go. Hearing the name, he whirled around to look. Using the chance, Wei Wuxian hit Jin Liang's neck, forming a blade with his hand. He laid Jin Liang flat on the ground, rolled up the bottom of his trousers, and examined the curse mark on his leg. He tried a few methods, but none of them made it fade. After a moment, he sighed, knowing that it'd be difficult. Jin Liang slowly woke up after a while. Putting his hand to his neck, some pain could still be felt. He was so angry that he jumped up and unsheathed his sword at once. "How dare you hit me? My uncle hadn't even hit me before!" Wei Wuxian exclaimed. "Really? Doesn't he say that he'll break your legs all the time?" Jin Liang fumed. "He's only saying that, you damn cut sleeve. What on earth do you want? Wei Wuxian covered his face and shouted to it behind Jin Liang. "Han Guanjun!" Jin Liang was more scared of Lao Wanji than he was of his uncle. After all, his uncle was from his own clan, but Han Guanjun was from someone else's. Frightened, he fled at once, shouting as he ran, "You damn cut-sleeve, disgusting maniac! I'll remember you. This is not over yet." Behind him, Wei Wuxian laughed so hard that he couldn't breathe. After Jin Liang disappeared into the distance, his chest itched in a stuffy way, and finally managed to stop the laughter after a while of coughing. Only then did he have time to think. Wei Wuxian was taken home by Jiang Fengmian when he was 9. Most memories from back then were already blurred, yet Jin Liang's mother, Jia Yanli, remembered all of them and even told him quite a few. She said that after his father heard of the news that his parents both died in battle, he had always dedicated himself to finding the child that these past friends left behind. After searching for a while, he finally found the child in Yilian. The first time they met, Wei Wuxian was kneeling on the ground eating the fruit peels that somebody tossed on the ground. Yiling's winter and spring were quite cold, yet the child only wore thin layers. The knees were already tattered, and on its feet were 2 different shoes that didn't fit at all. As he was looking down, searching for fruit peels, Xiang called him. He still remembered that there was a Ying in his name, so he lifted his head. Although his cheeks were both red and chapped from the cold, he still wore a smile. Jia Li said that he was born with a smiling look. No matter what unfortunate things happened, he wouldn't cling on to them, no matter what situation he was in. He would be happy. Although it sounded a bit heartless, it really wasn't bad. Jiang Fumian fed him a piece of melon, and he let Jiang Fumian carry him back. Back then, Jiang Chun was also around 8 or 9. He kept a few puppies to play with him in Lotus Pier. Finding out that Wei Wuxian was extremely scared of dogs, Jiang Fumian suggested for Jiang Chun to send the dogs away. Jiang Chun was really unwilling. After throwing a tantrum of breaking things, pouting and bawling his eyes out, he finally sent the dogs away. Although because of this, he held hostility toward Wei Wuxian for a long time. After the two grew familiar, they had begun to cause mischief together. Whenever he ran into dogs, Jiang Chun would always chase them away, then have a good laugh at Wei Wuxian, who jumped onto a tree. He had always thought that Jiang Chun would be on his side and Lao Wanji on the side opposite to him. He could never have imagined that things would turn out so differently. Wei Wuxian walked toward the rendezvous point that he and Lao Wanji were supposed to meet at. Nobody walked among the sparse lights that flickered in the night. Without having to look around, the white-robed figure stood at the end of the street, standing motionless with his head hung low. Before Wei Wuxian made any sound, Lao Wanji looked up and saw him. After some hesitation, he walked over with a darkened expression. Wei Wuxian didn't know why, but he involuntarily took a step backward. He could almost see scarlet streaks of blood by the corners of Lao Wanji's eyes. He had to admit, Lao Wanji's face really did look quite scary. However, having taken only one step back, his ankle twisted and he seemed as if he almost collapsed on the ground. With a change in expression, Lao Wanji hurried over and tightly gripped his wrist like what he did last time back in Tafan Mountain. After Wei Wuxian had been steadied, Lao Wanji knelt down on one knee to examine his leg. Wei Wuxian was rather shocked. No, Hang Guanjun, you don't have to do this. Lao Wanji raised his head slightly, the pair of light-colored eyes boring into him, then looked down again and continued to roll up the leg of his trousers. Still under his grip, Wei Wuxian could do nothing except to look up at the sky. His entire leg was covered with the black bruise of the curse mark. After staring at it for a while, Lao Wanji spoke in a bitter voice. I only left for a few hours. Wei Wuxian shrugged. A few hours is a long time. Anything could have happened. There, straighten up. He backhandedly pulled Lao Wanji up. It's only the average curse mark. We can just kill it when it comes to find me. Hang Guanjun, you'll need to help me. If you don't, I won't be able to handle it. Have you caught the person? Is it him? Where is he now? Lao Wanji looked in the direction of a signboard that stood in front of a shop far down the street. Wei Wuxian continued, Let's deal with the stone castle issue first. He then walked down the shop. He didn't notice before, but his leg felt a bit numb, probably from Xidian. It was a good thing that Jiang Chun controlled Xidian's force so that he wasn't made into a scorched corpse that had been struck by lightning. Lao Wanji stood behind him. He suddenly called out, Wei Ying. Wei Wuxian's figure paused. A second later, he pretended as if he didn't hear the name and answered, What? Lawanji. This was transformed from Jinliang's body, was it not? It wasn't a question, but a statement. Wei Wuxian didn't say anything. Lawanji spoke again. You met Jiang Wenyin. It wasn't hard to figure out due to the mark that Xidian left on top of the curse mark. Wei Wuxian turned around. As long as both of us are alive in this world, we'd meet for sure, sooner or later. Lawanji, do not go. Wei Wuxian, if I don't go, how am I supposed to leave? Are you going to carry me on your back or something? Lawanji looked at him in silence. Wei Wuxian's smile froze on his face just as a foreboding feeling crossed his mind. If it were the Lanchan from back then, he would definitely be shocked, speechless by these words, and either leave with a cold face or completely ignore him. However, it'd be hard to say how the Lanchan now would respond. As he had expected, hearing these words, Lawanji walked in front of him, as if he really was going to bend down, kneel and carry Wei Wuxian on his back, despite his honorable status. Shock came upon Wei Wuxian once more. Stop! I wasn't being serious. It's only numb because I got hit by Xidian a few times. Not that it broke. It looked bad for a full-grown man like me to be carried on someone else's back. Lawanji asked, would it look bad? Wei Wuxian replied, would it look good? After a moment of silence, Lawanji responded, but you have also carried me on your back before. Wei Wuxian, did such a thing ever happen? Why don't I remember? Lawanji answered in an indifferent tone, you never remember such things. Wei Wuxian, everyone says that I have a bad memory. Alright, fine. Anyways, I'm not letting you carry me on your back. Lawanji, are you sure? Wei Wuxian replied in a resolute manner, I'm sure. The two stayed silent for a while. Suddenly, one of Lawanji's arms wrapped around his back, and as Lawanji bent down slightly, another went toward the back of his knees. Wei Wuxian was both shorter and lighter than him. Therefore, he was picked up easily. His body was embraced in a pair of firm arms. Wei Wuxian didn't expect his answer to lead to this at all. Both in his past and current lives, it was the first time that he had been treated like this by anyone. He was horrified. Lanchan! Carrying him, Lawanji both walked and replied to him steadily. You said that you didn't want to be carried on my back. Wei Wuxian, I didn't say that I wanted to be carried like this either. Fortunately, it was all real late into the night. There wasn't any people walking in the streets, so it wasn't that embarrassing. Wei Wuxian wasn't someone with a thin face either. Having been carried for a few steps, he quickly relaxed. He grinned as he played with the front of Lawanji's clothes, pretending to tug at it. So you want to see whose face is thicker? A cold scent of sandalwood enveloped him. Without paying him attention, Lawanji looked straight forward and made no reaction, maintaining the righteous, serious expression. Seeing that nothing could affect him, Wei Wuxian thought to himself as he continued to play with Lawanji's clothes. It seems that Lanchan's heart for revenge is actually quite strong. He's going to make me pay for however many times I've teased him in the past and take the fun away. This is such an improvement. Not only has his level of cultivation improved, his face also improved. Wei Wuxian asked, Lanchan, you've known that it was me ever since we were at Dafan Mountain, right? Lawanji, yes. Wei Wuxian wondered, how could you tell? Lawanji looked down at him. You want to know? Wei Wuxian declared, Yes. Lawanji, you told me yourself. Wei Wuxian, myself? Because of Jinliang? Because of I summoned Wenyan? None of this, right? It seemed as if something had sent ripples through Lawanji's eyes, yet the slight waves faded immediately and his eyes were still full of water again. He spoke in a serious tone. Think, Wei Wuxian replied. I only asked you because I can't think of the reason. This time, no matter how he asked, Lawanji refused to answer. With Wei Wuxian in his arms, he stepped into an inn. Aside from the front desk clerk who chugged on some water, none of the bystanders acted strangely. As they arrived at the door of the room, Wei Wuxian spoke. Okay, we are here. It's time for you to let me down. You don't have a third hand to open the door. Before he finished his words, Lawanji did something that was extremely impolite. It was possibly the first time in his whole life that he had ever done such a rude act. Carrying Wei Wuxian, he kicked the door open. The two doors sprang open and the person who sat nervously inside instantly wailed, Hang Guanjun, I don't know. After he realized in what posture the two of them came inside, he stared blankly at them, barely managing to finish the last sentence. I really don't know. It really was the head shaker. Acting as if he didn't say anything, Lawanji carried Wei Wuxian inside and put him on the bamboo mat. Ni Huaisang seemed as if he couldn't bear to look at the scene and immediately opened his fan, covering his face with it. Wei Wuxian walked around the fan to examine him. Even after so many years, his past classmate didn't bear many changes. He looked the same as he did back then. Although he was born with an elegant, attractive face, his expression made him seem as if one could do anything to him. His stylish outfit showed a fine taste in clothing, which meant that he definitely put plenty of thought into it. Compared to the leader of a sect, he further resembled a wealthy idler. Even if he wore an imperial robe, he wouldn't seem like a prince. Even if he held a saber, he wouldn't seem like a cultivator. He denied it no matter what, so Lawanji put the piece of fabric that the spiritual dog had bitten off onto the table. Ni Huaisang felt for his sleeve and lacked a certain scrap, then replied miserably, I just happened to pass by. I really don't know anything. Wei Wuxian, if you don't know, I'll talk. As you listen to me, maybe you'll figure out that you do know something after all. Ni Huaisang opened and closed his mouth a few times, unable to provide a response. Wei Wuxian proceeded. In the area of Jianghe's Xiang Ridge, there have been rumors of the man-eating ridge and man-eating castle, but there haven't been any actual victims, which is why it's mere hearsay. The hearsay would make it so that normal people avoid the Xiang Ridge. Thus, its real function is to act as a defense line. The first one, in fact. If there's a first, there must be a second. The second defense line is the walking corpses on the Xiang Ridge. Even if someone who is not scared of the man-eating castle rumors either purposely or accidentally went inside the ridge, after they see the walking dead, they will definitely flee. However, these walking corpses are small in number and weak in terms of power, so they won't cause any real harm. The third defense line is the maze array by the stone castle. The first two are to defend against normal people, only this one is to defend against cultivators. but nevertheless, it only works against average cultivators. If a cultivator who holds a spiritual weapon or a dog and specializes in masonry comes, or a cultivator as powerful as Hung Guanjun, this defense line will have to be broken. The 3 defense measures exist in order for the stone castle on the Xiang ridge to remain hidden from the public. The identity of the people who built the stone castle is quite clear. This is the Nisac's area. Aside from the Nisac, nobody else is capable of easily setting up these 3 obstacles in Xiang. And moreover, you happen to appear near the stone castle and leave evidence. What exactly is the Xiang sect's goal of building the man-eating castle on the Xiang ridge? Where did the corpses in the wall came from? Were they eaten? Sect leader, if you don't give us a proper explanation here, I'm afraid that after the secret is exposed, all of the sects and clans come here to interrogate you. When the time comes, even if you want to explain things, there won't be anyone to listen to or believe in you. Ni Huaisang replied desperately, as if he had given up. It isn't a man-eating castle at all. It's just my sect's ancestral burial ground. Wei Wuxian questioned. Ancestral burial ground? Whose ancestral burial ground buries sabers instead of corpses? Ni Huaisang responded with a sullen face. Hung Guanjun, before I explain things, can you promise me something? Seeing that our 2 sects have known each other for long and that our old brothers have sworn, no matter what I say after this, you and the beside one must not tell anyone. If the secret is exposed in the future, I'd greatly appreciate it if the 2 of you can say a few good things as witnesses. You've always been true to your words. If you promise, I'll believe you. Lao Wenqi, as you wish. Wei Wuxian asked, You said that it's not a man-eating castle after all, so does it mean that it hasn't eaten anyone? Ni Huaisang clenched his teeth and answered obediently, It has. Wei Wuxian, wow. Ni Huaisang immediately added, But it was only once. And the one at fault wasn't our sect, and it was dozens of years ago. The rumors of the man-eating castle on the Xiang ridge also started since then. I only fanned the flames and magnified the rumors. Lao Wenqi, the details, please. Sitting down, his polite words were almost as powerful as a threat. Ni Huaisang finally started his explanation. He began, Hung Guanjun, you know that we, the Ni sect, are different from the other sects, because our sect's founder was a butcher. The other sects cultivate using swords, while our sect, on the other hand, cultivate using sabers. This was known by everyone and was by no means a secret. Even the sect motive of the Xiang sect was the vicious head of a beast that resembled a dog or a pig. Ni Huaisang continued, Because our cultivation method was different from those of the other sects, and our founder was originally a butcher, it was only natural for blood to be shed. The sabers of our past sect leaders were all heavy with hostile energy and killing intent. Almost every single sect leader met a sudden death from a chi deviation explosion. Their irritable tempers also had a lot to do with this. Wei Wuxian raised a brow. Now, this is getting quite close to demonic cultivation. Ni Huaisang quickly defended. It's different. Demonic cultivation is only demonic cultivation because it uses human lives. But instead of human lives, our sect's Sabbaths use the lives of those evil spirits and beasts. Throughout their whole lives, they have been killing such things. So if they aren't able to kill them any longer, they'd cause trouble and disrupt the sect. A Sabbath spirit only deems one person as its master, allowing nobody else to use it. It's not like we later generations can melt the Sabbaths. First, it'd be disrespectful to the ancestors. Second, it's possible that even melting them won't solve the problem. Bai Wuxian commented, "Quite full of themselves, aren't they?" Mei Huai sang, "Indeed, the Sabbaths who fought and cultivated alongside our ancestors are indeed in a position to be full of themselves." He continued, "As the generations went on, the sect leaders had higher levels of cultivation and the problem also worsened. That is, until the sixth sect leader came up with a solution." Wei Wuxian asked, "To build the man-eating castle?" Ni Huai sang, No. Although they are connected, this solution only appeared later. The sixth sect leader did this. He built 2 coffins for his father's and his grandfather's Sabbaths, then dug a tomb. Inside the tomb, instead of any valuable treasures, he put hundreds of corpses that were about to transform. Lao Wenji frowned slightly. Ni Huaisang immediately blurted, "Hang Wenjun, I can explain. They weren't killed by our sect's people. We had to gather them from place to place. We also bought a bunch of them at high prices. The sixth sect leader said that if the Sabbath spirits wanted to fight with evil beings, then give them evil beings for them to fight forever. The pre-transformation corpses were buried along with the sword containing coffins, like they were burial goods for the Sabbath spirits. The Sabbath spirits could suppress the transformation of the corpses, and at the same time, the corpses would calm the sword spirits' desire and fury. The situation would go on as they were, with the 2 sides keeping each other in check. Only by this method did the future generations attain peace." Bai Wuxian asked again, "Then why was a stone castle built afterward? Why were the corpses buried inside the walls? And didn't you say that it did eat a few people?" Ni Huaisang answered, "These questions are actually the same question. I guess you can say that it did eat people, but it wasn't on purpose. Our sixth sect leader constructed the Sabbath tomb in such a way that it looked like an average tomb, and the future generations followed how he did it. But about 50 years ago, the tomb was dug up by some grave robbers." Wei Wuxian made an "oh" sound. He silently exclaimed, "What a case of waking the sleeping lion!" Ni Huaisang, "For an event as big as building a tomb, no matter how cautious and discreet one can be, it's impossible for everything to stay hidden. The grave robbers pried into the matter and firmly believed that there was a huge tomb from past dynasties in the Xiang region. They planned this out a long time ago and came prepared. Among the unruly group of people, there were actually 1 or 2 who had true skills, allowing the mob to locate the orientation, pass the maze area, and find our Sabbatom. They've seen enough dead people in their lives, so after digging a hole and entering the tomb, they weren't really scared of the corpses. But they searched everywhere for gold and treasures breathing next to the corpses, and even worse, they were youthful men in the prime of their lives, filled with young energy. Remember, the corpses lying inside were all about to transform. It wasn't hard to figure out what happened. 10 or so corpses transformed immediately. However, these tomb raiders weren't average people. With a complete set of tools, they actually managed to somehow kill the walking corpses once more. After the fight, there was flesh and blood all over the ground. They finally realized that the tomb was dangerous and got ready to leave. But just as they were leaving, they were eaten. The number of corpses put in the tomb was strictly controlled. It was neither more, neither less, just enough to be at a balance with the Sabbath spirits. It would have been fine if the tomb raiders caused just the transformation, since after they left, the Sabbath spirits would have suppressed the transformation again. But with the chaos they caused, the corpses were all cut to pieces, and so there was suddenly a few less corpses than it began with. For the Sabbatom to ensure that there were enough fierce corpses and sword spirits to suppress each other, it could only close itself off and trap them inside the tomb for the group to make up for the shortage they had caused. Since the Sabbatom was destroyed, the sect leader at the time began to think of different methods. He chose another spot on the Xiang ridge and built a Sabbath hall instead of a Sabbatom. In case grave robbers came again, he'd hid the corpses inside the walls in disguise. The sword hall was the rumored man-eating castle. When the grave robbers came to Xiang, they pretended to be hunters. They never returned after going to the Xiang ridge and left no corpses behind, so people started to say that they were devoured by a monster in the ridge. Then, after the stone castles were built, before the new masonry was set up, a passerby accidentally came upon it again. Luckily, no doors were built on the castles, so he couldn't venture inside. But after leaving the ridge, he told everyone that there were a group of strange white castles in the Xiang ridge and that the man-eating monster must have dwelt there. We thought that it'd be beneficial for the rumors to spread so that nobody dared to go near the area, so we exaggerated a bit and created the legend of the man-eating castle. But it really can eat humans. Xiang took out a handkerchief and a white stone the size of a garlic head from within his sleeves. He used the handkerchief to wipe away sweat and pass the white stone over. The two of you can take a look at this. Wei Wuxian took the stone. After having a better look at it, he found something white that protruded from the stone. It looked like the bone of a human's finger. He immediately realized what was going on. Xiang finished wiping his sweat and continued. That young Master Jin somehow made an explosion that created a hole in the wall. To be able to break such a thick wall must have meant that he also carried a lot of spiritual tools on him. But wait, that's not the point. What I'm saying is that the area he blew up just happened to be the earliest Sabbath hall we built in the Xiang ridge. Back then, we didn't think of using the stone bricks on both sides and filling the center with soil to prevent yang energy from going on so that they can't easily transform. We simply put the corpses inside. So, when young Master Jin made the opening, he didn't realize that he also destroyed a skeleton that was buried inside. Before long, he was sucked into the walls of the castle in the place of the corpse that he blew up. Every so often, I go to Xiang ridge to check things out. Today, when I went, I found this. Just as I picked up the stone, a dog came after me. This sword hole is pretty much an ancestral tomb. The more Xiang told, the more miserable he felt. Most cultivators know that this is our area, so they'd never night hunt around Xiang. Who knew that? who knew that he had such a bad luck. First, the disobedient Jinliang had his mind set on the Xiang ridge, and then the two in search of where the ghost hand pointed, Lao Wenji and Wei Wuxian came as well. He spoke again. Hang Guanjun, and you, I already said that you mustn't tell anyone else about this, or else, seeing from the Jiangheni sect's half-dead situation right now, if this was released to the public, Ni Huaisang would become a sinner, a disgrace to his ancestors, even if he died. It was only natural that he'd rather be the secret laughing stock of all the sects instead of focusing on cultivation or daring to sharpen his saber's blade. If his cultivation reached a certain level, he would gradually become more irritable and in the end die with anger the same way that his brother and ancestors died. Even after his death, his sword would haunt the living and disrupt the peace of the world. Or else, seeing from the Jiangheni sect's half-dead situation right now, if this was released to the public, Ni Huaisang would become a sinner, a disgrace to his ancestors even if he died. It was only natural that he'd rather be the secret laughing stock of all the sect instead of focusing on cultivation or daring to sharpen his saber's blade. If his cultivation reached a certain level, he would gradually become more irritable and in the end die with anger the same way that his brother and ancestors died. Even after his death, his sword would haunt the living and disrupt the peace of the whole sect. Itself, being a worthless person, even seemed better. It was quite an unsolvable problem. Ever since the founder of the Ni sect, this had been the same. Surely it didn't mean that the future generations would have to deny the path and basis that the founder forged. All of the cultivation sects were skilled in different areas. Similar to how the Gusulan sect was skilled at music, the violence and power of the Jiangheni sect's saber spirits were how it outshone the other sects. If it abandoned its founder's ideal and started anew in search of a different path, who knew how many years it'd take, or if it even succeed or not. Moreover, Ni Huaisang would never dare to betray the Ni sect and cultivate a different path. Because of this, his only choice was to be a good-for-nothing. If he weren't a sect leader and spent his whole life the same way he did back in the cloud recesses, fooling around for entire days, he'd actually be in a more comfortable position than he was now. But since his brother had passed away already, no matter how hard it was for him, he'd still have to take the responsibility on his shoulders and stumble forward. Ni Huaisang left after telling them again and again not to say anything, and Wei Wuxian blanked out for a while. Suddenly, he felt Lao Wenji walk over. Lao Wenji kneeled with a single leg in front of him, then proceeded to roll up his trousers with an earnest face. He hurriedly spoke. "Wait, again?" Lao Wenji, "We will remove the curse mark first." Within one day, Hang Guanjun had kneeled in such a way so many times in front of him. Although Lao Wenji looked quite serious, he really couldn't bear to look at the scene. Wei Wuxian spoke. "I'll do it myself." Quickly rolling up the trouser legs, he could see that the curse mark covered the entire lower half of the leg, past his knees, and climbed onto the upper half. Wei Wuxian took a glance at it. "It's already past my thighs." Lao Wenji turned his head away and did not answer. Wei Wuxian found it quite odd. "Lanchan?" Only then did Lao Wenji turn to the front again, gaze still slightly off to the side. Seeing this, Wei Wuxian blinked his eyes, wanting to make fun of him for some reason. Just as he was about to tease Lao Wenqi, a shattering sound suddenly came from by the desk. They both stood up to look. The teacups and teapot broke to pieces on the ground. A Xiang pouch lay amid the white shards of porcelain and the tea that spilled out. The surface of the bag went up and down as if something was trapped inside, eager to come out. Although the Xiang pouch was only the size of a fist, it was specially made to store things. Complex incantations were also sewn on both the inside and outside, adding a few more sealing layers. Lao Wenqi originally sealed the arm inside the pouch and put it under a teacup on the table. Now, seeing its agitation, they finally remembered that it was time to perform rest. If not for the short nightly duets they performed to calm it, no matter how strong the Xiang pouch's power of suppression was, it couldn't trap the ghost hand alone. Wei Wuxian felt for the bamboo flute that had been by his waist, but he found nothing. Turning round, he saw that Lao Wenqi already had the flute in his hands. Lao Wenqi's head tilted slightly downward. He only handed the flute back after carving on it for a while in a dedicated manner. Taking the flute back, Wei Wuxian noticed that after it had been adjusted, even rough details such as the finger holes were much finer. Lao Wenqi played properly. Remembering the horrible duet they played in the Miangxi that angered Lan Qiren to the point of waking up from a coma and fainting again, Wei Wuxian laughed so hard that he almost fell on the ground, thinking to himself, it must have been tough for him these few days, tolerating this for so long. He stopped himself from fooling around any longer and with a serious expression raised the flute to his lips. However, having only played a few notes, the Xiang pouch suddenly multiplied in size and stood upright on the ground. A note cracked with a tut. Wei Wuxian commented, "Has it gotten too used to the bad playing? I'm playing properly for once, and it doesn't even like it." As if replying him, the Xiang pouch flung itself at Wei Wuxian. Lao Wenqi's melody took a sharp turn. With one smooth gesture, the 7 strings vibrated at once, emitting a noise so strong that it almost seemed like an avalanche. After the sound, the Xiang pouch fell backward to the ground again. As if nothing had happened, Wei Wuxian continued playing. Lao Wenqi's wrist softened. Following the tune of rest, the guzhen's melody became calm once more and gradually blended with the flutes. The song finished, and the Xiang pouch finally shrunk to the size it had been, remaining motionless. Wei Wuxian stuck the flute back by his waist. In these few days, it's never looked as impatient as this before. It seemed as if it was provoked by something. Lao Wenqi nodded and turned to him. "And it was something on you." Wei Wuxian immediately looked downward at himself. Today, there was only one thing on him that was different: the curse mark that had been transferred to him from Jinliang. Jinliang's curse mark was left on him when he was at the stone castles of the Xianglu Ridge. Seeing how strongly the ghost hand reacted to the curse mark, did it mean that... Wei Wuxian, do you mean that another part of this body might be within the walls of the Nisat Sabha Hall? On the next morning, the two departed again, heading back to the Xianglu Ridge. Yesterday, Ni Huaisang had been caught and confessed everything. Over the night, he called for all the sect's reliable disciples to clean up the mess that the intruders created. When Wei Wuxian and Lao Wenji walked over, the piece of wall that Wei Wuxian dug Jin Liang out of just had been filled with a new corpse was already put inside. Watching the white bricks stack up neatly, he wiped some sweat off his brows. However, as he turned round, his legs almost gave out. He pulled a pringing smile onto his face. Hong Guanzhen, and you? Wei Wuxian waved his hands as a grin. Exactly, you're building the walls? Ni Huaisang wiped sweat away from his handkerchief, rubbing so many times that he almost took a layer of skin away. Yes. Wei Wuxian said in a voice filled with much empathy and a dash of timidity. My apologies. I'm really sorry for the inconvenience, but you might need to build the wall again afterwards. Ni Huaisang. Yes. What? Wait! Before he could finish his sentence, Bichen unsheathed. Ni Huaisang gaped as he watched the brick wall, which he repaired mere moment ago, crack open again. Destruction was always easier than restoration. Wei Wuxian's speed at taking bricks down was countless times faster than their speed at stacking bricks. Ni Huaisang trembled as he tightly gripped his fan, feeling so wrong that he was on the verge of bursting into tears. Yet, since Hong Guanzhen stood on the side and commented nothing, he didn't dare to say anything either. After Lao Wenji explained the situation to him in a concise manner, he immediately swore to the heavens and earth. Nonsense! That's utter nonsense! The corpses that our saber hall uses are all complete with each limb attached. It's impossible for there to be some armless male corpse. If you don't believe me, I'll take part the wall with you and prove my innocence. But afterwards, you must put them back as soon as possible, without any delay. After all, this is our ancestral burial ground. A few disciples of the Ni sect also joined them. Now that there were other people doing the work, Wei Wuxian backed off and stood on the side waiting for results. After an hour, the stone bricks on the wall that Jin Liang had been buried in were mostly taken off. Some disciples put on face masks, while others swallowed special red-colored pills, so that the breathing and human energy didn't cause corpse transformations. Among the black dirt, an ashen hand or a vein-laced foot sometimes poked out, in addition to the tangled grimy hair plastered everywhere. Each and every male corpse was hastily cleaned and set row by row on the ground. The corpses came in all shapes and sizes. Some were already skeletons, some were in the process of rotting, some were still quite fresh. However, every single one of them had a complete body. They didn't find any male corpse that was missing a left arm. Ni Huaisang spoke wearily. Taking apart this one wall is enough, isn't it? Does any more need to be taken down? Probably not, right? It was indeed enough. The curse mark on Jin Liang's body was extremely dark in color, so that being that created it was most likely buried nearby him, and the range would definitely not exceed this wall. Wei Wuxian squatted down by a row of corpses. After pondering for a few moments, he turned to Lao Wenji. Should we get the Xiang pouch? Taking the left hand out of the Xiang pouch for it to identify the body on its own wouldn't be a bad idea. However, if it was too close to the other limbs of the corpse, it'd be hard not to agitate it and trigger worse situations. and due to the abundance of dark energy in this special location, the level of danger multiplied. This was why they carefully chose to come during daytime. Vaibhushan shook his head and thought to himself, "This doesn't mean that the arm doesn't belong to a man, does it? No, that'd be impossible. I can tell whether a hand belongs to a man or a woman at first sight. Then would it mean that the owner has 3 arms?" Just as he was about to laugh at his own thought, Lavanchi spoke again. "The legs." With his reminder, Vaibhushan finally remembered. He overlooked the fact that the curse mark didn't spread any further than his legs. He quickly called, "Take off the pants! Take off the pants!" Nihwai-san was shocked to death. "Why would you say such shameful things in front of Hangwanjun?" Vaibhushan responded, "How was it shameful? We are all men anyways. Help me take off all the corpses' pants. Only the male corpses. This has nothing to do with the female ones." As he spoke, he started reaching out toward the belt sashes of the corpses on the ground. It really was unfortunate for Nihwai-san. He didn't expect at all that after confessing everything yesterday, today he needed to take off the corpse's pants right inside the sabha hole of his ancestors. Moreover, they were male corpses. With a face full of tears, he thought that for sure after he died, he would be slapped once on the face by every ancestor in the Xiang sect and end up injured so badly that he'd be handicapped even after he reincarnated. Luckily, Vaibhushan's act was stopped by Lavanchi. Just as Nihwai-san was about to praise how worthy of his title Hangwanjun was, he heard him speak, "I will do it." Vaibhushan, "You'll do it? You're really going to do such a thing?" The corner of Lavanchi's brows seemed to be twitching slightly, as if he was holding something back. He repeated, "Do not move. I will do it." This was the worst of all the shocks Nihwai-san experienced today. Of course, Lavanchi wouldn't actually use his hands to pull on the corpse's pants. He simply used beaten and lightly slide open the clothing on the corpses, revealing the skin inside. This wasn't needed for some of the corpses as the clothes were already quite ragged. A few moments later, he spoke up. "I found it." Everyone immediately looked toward the ground. On both thighs of the corpses beside Lavanchi's white boots, there were 2 light circular marks. The stitches of the flesh-colored threads were tightly sewn around. There was a faint difference between the colors of the skin above and below the stitches. Clearly, the legs and upper body of the corpse didn't belong to the same person. This pair of legs was swaying on by someone. Nihwai-san was already shocked, speechless. Vaibhushan inquired, "Who chooses the corpses that the knee sect uses for the sabha hall?" Nihwai-san replied with a glazed expression, "Usually the parsec leaders chose and stored them when they were still alive. My brother passed away at an earlier age. He didn't have enough, so I also helped him choose some. I kept whichever corpses that were complete with all limbs. I don't know about anything other than this." It'd be impossible to get anything out of him as to who exactly sneaked the corpse inside. From the people who provided the corpses to the disciple of the knee sect, there were countless suspects. It was likely that the truth would be revealed only if they found all body parts and pieced the corpse and soul together. Finally, having managed to separate the pair of legs and the other half of the male corpse, Wei Wuxian put them inside a new Xiang pouch as he spoke to Lao Wanji. "Looks like our dear friend here is cut to pieces." And not only that, the parts were scattered all over the place. One piece here, one piece there. Just how much hatred did the murderer hold for him? We can only hope that the pieces aren't too tiny. Although Nihua-san still said "see you" when they set off, judging from his frightened face, he most likely didn't want to see them ever again for the rest of his life. The two left the Xianglu Ridge and returned to the inn. Upon arriving at the relatively safe place, they took out the 3 limbs and started to examine them. As they had expected, the pair of legs were of the same color as the severed arm. And if they were put close together, they would react strongly, vibrating non-stop as if they wanted to join together. But the efforts were useless, as there was still one part of the body between them that was missing. It was certain that they belonged to the same person. Aside from the fact that this was a man with a tall physique, long limbs, a muscular body, and a high level of cultivation, they knew nothing else about the mysterious corpse. Fortunately, the ghost hand soon pointed at where the next step would take place, the southwest. Following the direction, Wei Wuxian and Lao Wanji made their way to Yueyang.